You didn't notice when it started. It wasn't a grand moment, no trumpet of collapse, just a slow, almost invisible shift. A moment where your silence grew heavier around them, where your texts became longer, your voice softer, your presence smaller. You told yourself it was love, or kindness, or maybe just patience. But if you dig deep, really deep, you'll see it was something else. You cared. And the moment you did, something in you began to dissolve. Because caring, real, raw, unguarded caring, requires exposure. It strips you of armor, opens the gates. And Machiavelli knew exactly what happens when a ruler opens his gates before a siege. They burn the kingdom to the ground. You gave too much. Not in grand, cinematic gestures. Not in some romantic, rain-soaked declaration. You gave quietly, by compromising a boundary, shrinking an opinion, swallowing your anger, smiling when you were breaking. And with every inch you gave, they took a mile. Not because they were cruel, but because people don't follow kindness. They follow power. You thought being vulnerable would draw them closer. That if you cared more, they'd finally understand you. If you showed your truth, they'd offer theirs. But you forgot something. Caring too much isn't intimacy. It's surrender. And when you start to care more than they do, you hand them the blueprint to destroy you. You give them the lever that can move your whole world, the smile they withhold, the message they delay, the tone they use. Suddenly, your mood is theirs to command. You check your phone like it's sacred. You replay conversations like crime scenes. You lie in bed, wide awake, analyzing emojis. Did they mean that? Why didn't they say this? Did I do something wrong? That's not love. That's psychological hostage-taking. You used to walk into a room like you owned it. Now you walk in and scan for their reaction. You used to speak your mind. Now you calculate every word. Because you're afraid. Afraid that one wrong move will make them lose interest. That one real moment will make them leave. So you become agreeable, predictable, safe. But safety doesn't seduce. Machiavelli didn't believe people are evil. He believed they're selfish. And when you care too much, you stop being a mystery. You stop being a challenge. You become a certainty, a given. And what is given is taken for granted. You've turned love into a performance, affection into a negotiation, your heart into collateral. You don't say what you want anymore. You say what keeps the peace. But here's the truth you don't want to face. The more you try to keep them, the faster they slip away. Because they don't feel drawn to you anymore. They feel in control of you. You taught them how to treat you. You taught them that your love is unconditional, your patience eternal, your self-respect negotiable. And once they realize you'll never walk away, they stop trying to make you stay. So you sit there, staring at a screen that doesn't light up. You fold deeper into yourself, wondering why they're pulling away. And you'll tell yourself it's bad timing, or that they're just scared of intimacy, or that love is hard. But deep down, in a place you try to ignore, you know exactly what happened. You cared too much, and they didn't have to care at all. And now you're addicted to a feeling that's never coming back. You're craving the echo of the person you were before you bent yourself to fit their mold. And slowly, your identity erodes into theirs. Not because they stole it, but because you gave it away. You want them to chase you, but you've made it clear. You'll never run. And that is when they stop following. You thought love was about giving, but Machiavelli knew the truth. Love, like power, only survives if it's earned, never when it's begged for. And the moment you cared more than they did, you lost both. But what if you could take it back? What if you could unlearn the addiction to caring? What if you could become the one they fear losing again? Because here's the truth. Machiavelli never said aloud, but lived through every strategy. Control doesn't come from withholding love. It comes from not needing it. It didn't begin with them. Long before they arrived, you were already wired to overcare. Maybe it started when you were a child, watching someone you loved pull away when you cried too loud. Or maybe it was the silence after a punishment, the cold, stretched air that taught you, don't make problems. You learned fast that approval wasn't given freely. It was earned, kept, maintained. And so, without knowing it, you became someone who anticipated needs before they were voiced. You apologized first. You forgave fast. You smoothed over chaos that wasn't even yours. You were the fixer, the adapter, because deep down, you believed something dangerous. If you don't care enough, they'll leave. But if you care too much, maybe they'll stay. And that belief, that's what made you weak. Not your kindness, not your empathy, but your need to be needed. Because needing someone to stay is the fastest way to make them go. Machiavelli saw this not just in relationships, but in empires. The most vulnerable rulers weren't the cruel ones. They were the desperate ones. The ones who feared abandonment, rebellion, disapproval. The ones who bent too far in the name of unity. They were the ones whose power was an illusion, because the people knew they could be manipulated by fear. And isn't that what you've become? A ruler in your own kingdom, terrified of exile. So you bargain with your time, your energy, your truth. You become so afraid of losing them that you forget what you were ever offering in the first place. It's not their fault. People respond to emotional gravity. They gravitate towards strength. And you taught them, over time, that they held the weight in this equation, that your emotions orbit theirs, that you're available, always, no matter what. They cancel plans. You say, it's okay. They disappear for days. You tell yourself, they're just busy. They hurt you? You wonder, what did I do wrong? That voice inside you, the one that questions your worth every time someone pulls away, that's not love. That's programming. That's a lifetime of connecting love with approval. But here's what Machiavelli would whisper to you in the middle of the night. Power is not taken. It is given by those too afraid to hold it. And that's what you've done. You gave them the power to define your worth. You made them the mirror. And every time they withheld affection, you shattered. But you weren't born to shatter. You were born to lead. To walk into a room with your chest full of silence, so confident it makes others shrink. To say no. To mean it. To walk away from anyone who mistakes your heart for a leash. You've confused caring with loyalty. But real loyalty doesn't come from overgiving. It comes from self-respect. And until you learn that, until you realize that the most magnetic people in the world are those who do not need, you'll keep bleeding power from every wound they never bothered to close. You'll keep trying to earn what should have been mutual. You'll keep watering someone else's garden while yours dies in silence. But it doesn't have to stay this way. There is a point, sharp, clean, irreversible, when the person who cared the most stops. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in clarity. And when you reach that point, something terrifying and beautiful happens. You become dangerous. Not because you're cruel, but because you're free. And nothing is more attractive, more powerful, more untouchable than a person who has nothing left to prove. They won't understand it at first. They'll feel the shift. They'll text you, test you, try to pull you back into orbit. But your silence will speak louder than your old begging ever did, because you'll know something they never expected. The one who cares less always controls the game. And when you stop needing to win them, you win yourself. But the question is, do you know how to live without caring? Can you let go of the high that comes from being the most loyal person in the room? Because if you can, then you're ready for what comes next. Letting go doesn't feel like power in the beginning. It feels like death. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind of death where you sit alone in your car, gripping the steering wheel like it's the only thing holding you together. The kind where the silence, after they stop reaching out, sounds louder than a scream. You don't feel strong. You feel empty. Because for so long, caring too much was your identity. You built rituals around them. You checked your phone at the same time every morning. You curated your outfits based on what you thought they'd notice. You reshaped your weekends, your words, your warmth, just to stay relevant in their world. And when you pull that care back, when you stop reaching, texting, apologizing, explaining, begging, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like withdrawal, because you were addicted, not to them, but to who you got to be when you thought they might love you. Now there's space. Now there's silence. Now there's you. Raw, unfiltered, unchosen. And this is the part most people can't survive. They come running back, not to the person, but to the pattern. They'd rather feel something than feel nothing, even if that something is the slow erosion of their self-worth. But you don't flinch. You sit in the nothingness. You feel every sting of absence. You confront every thought that says, maybe if I just reach out once. You burn the bridge, and you watch it burn, because Machiavelli knew something that makes most people sick. Power is not about dominance. It's about restraint. The true test of control is not whether you can get them back. It's whether you don't need to. That's when the consequences begin. Because people feel it when the spell breaks. They feel the shift when your energy pulls back into yourself. They don't know why, but suddenly they start checking their phone more. Suddenly, your silence has gravity, and the balance of power tilts. Not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing theirs. They remember how easy it used to be, how fast you'd respond, how available you always were. Now, nothing. And that nothing, it haunts them. They start to spiral. Why are you quiet? Why haven't you said anything? Are you seeing someone else? Do you not care anymore? Yes. You don't? Not because you're heartless, but because you finally got tired of bleeding. You've rebuilt in the shadows, brick by brick. You've relearned how to enjoy coffee without checking your phone. You've relearned how to look in the mirror and not see rejection. You've relearned how to wake up without chasing someone's attention. And what happens now is unavoidable. They reach out. It won't be obvious. It'll be casual, innocent, masked. Hey, I saw something that reminded me of you. I was just thinking about you. How have you been? But their tone will betray them. There's a desperation under the surface, a subtle panic, because they can feel it. You're gone. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually. You've detached, and it terrifies them more than any argument ever could. Because now, you're not reacting. You're not waiting. You're not trying. And when you stop trying, you become the prize. The person they used to control with absence now controls the room with presence. But by the time they realize it, you've moved on. You no longer want what once destroyed you. You don't fantasize about their return. You pity their late arrival. Because the person they're looking for, the one who begged, bent, and bled, is dead. And all that's left is someone Machiavelli would bow to, unattached, unapologetic, unafraid. You didn't just stop caring. You evolved. And the real consequence? They now have to live with the version of you they created. The version that finally knows better. But here's the question most never ask. How do you stay detached without becoming numb? How do you hold power and still have a heart? Next, you've detached. You've felt the silence. You've survived the echo chamber of what used to be. Now, you're different. But power, real power, is like fire. Held wrong, it burns everything. Held right, it lights the way. And after everything, after the need, the shame, the withdrawal, there's a temptation to become cold, to armor up, to tell yourself, never again. Never feel that much. Never care that hard. Never let someone in that deep. So you start building walls. At first, they look like standards. Then they become silence. Then they become isolation dressed up as independence. And slowly, without noticing, you don't just stop caring about them. You stop caring about anyone. Because it's safer. It's easier to play detached than to risk being real again. It's easier to stay above everyone than to sit across from someone who might see the cracks. But here's where most people fail. They confuse strength with apathy. They think being untouchable means being unreachable. They become emotionally invincible and spiritually bankrupt. But Machiavelli didn't say, "Don't feel." He said, "Don't depend." There's a difference. One makes you numb. The other makes you dangerous. You've learned to sit with discomfort, to hear the scream inside you that says, you become magnetic, not because you're chasing, but because you've become the place people want to be near. Not the loudest in the room, but the one whose silence says, I know who I am. I don't need to prove it. You don't demand loyalty anymore. You command it. You don't fight for love. You filter for it. And when people ask what happened, why you're not the same, why you're harder to reach, why you're colder, quieter, more composed, you just smile. Because you know what they don't. You didn't get colder. You just stopped setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. You didn't stop caring. You just stopped offering your soul in exchange for crumbs. You didn't become arrogant. You just finally understood your worth. And now they'll chase you. Now they'll crave your attention. Now they'll obsess over the version of you they couldn't destroy. But they'll never get back what they once had. Because the old you, the one who cared too much, that person was powerful, but asleep. Now you're awake. And once you wake up, there's no going back. But there's still one final truth to uncover. A truth Machiavelli never wrote in ink. A truth about the source of all power. And the only thing that can take it away. So now you stand alone, not lonely, but clear. Not bitter, not broken, just awake. You no longer orbit around their gravity. You've become your own sun, self-sustaining, centered, undeniable, and they feel it. The ones who once had you on a string now watch from a distance, confused. How did you slip through their fingers? How did you change without them noticing? You didn't become someone new. You became someone true. The mask of the pleaser, the fixer, the overlover. It's on the floor now. You don't wear your worth like a question mark anymore. You wear it like armor. And still, there's one last truth. The one Machiavelli hinted at in every manipulation, every game, every war of silence. All power is temporary, if it comes from control. You can get them to chase you. You can become magnetic, unattainable, emotionally distant. You can be admired, desired, even feared. But if your power still comes from their reaction, if you still need them to want you, fear losing you, obsess over you, then you're still trapped. Because real power doesn't care who's watching. Real power is when you can sit across from someone you once would have bled for and feel nothing but peace. It's when you can give love and let it go. It's when you no longer need to be needed. It's when your power stops being a performance and becomes your nature. You stop weaponizing silence. You start valuing solitude. You stop calculating replies. You start speaking truth. You stop chasing the high of being wanted and start living in the depth of being whole. You become the kind of person who doesn't have to manipulate because you attract, who doesn't have to control because they choose. And suddenly, all the games, all the strategies, all the illusions collapse. You realize that Machiavelli was right about people. They will use you. They will test you. They will take as much as you let them. But he was wrong about one thing. You don't need to outmaneuver everyone to survive. You just need to outgrow the part of you that keeps handing away your crown. So you stop caring. Not out of spite, but out of sovereignty. You stop explaining. Not because you're cruel, but because your peace doesn't owe anyone a paragraph. You stop performing. Not because you're cold, but because your truth no longer needs applause. And in that silence, you rise, because the most powerful person in the room is never the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need the room. So now you walk alone, not because no one chose you, but because you chose yourself. And that is what they never expected. Are you strong enough to care without needing to be cared for? If this hit somewhere deeper than expected, share it. Someone else is still stuck in the place you just escaped. Be the silence that wakes them up.